Okay, so this is our simple vacuum chamber and vacuum pump setup, and this is our quick start video where we are going to explain the basic function and also show how to pull a vacuum and operate a vacuum chamber and a vacuum pump. All right, so this particular vacuum chamber has 3 removable shelves, and they're perforated in order to improve the airflow during evacuation. We have an oil-free 3 CFM dry vacuum pump, meaning that it does not require oil to operate, and as a result does not require any maintenance, and it does not have any oil emissions, meaning that this is a really good indoor vacuum pump that can be run in labs or anything that's indoor. And then the first component here is the vacuum valve. And we know it is a vacuum valve because it is connected through this vacuum hose to the vacuum pump. This particular valve is the vacuum adjustment valve. So you have a bleed-off valve that you can turn one way or another, and essentially this will enable you to adjust the vacuum. If you do not require to adjust the vacuum and you're looking for maximum vacuum, you essentially just close this. And then we have a dial vacuum gauge, and it shows vacuum from 0 to 30 inches of mercury, and then a venting valve. We call this a venting valve. And essentially this venting valve is closed if you want to pull a vacuum, and then you open it to evacuate the chamber and bring the pressure back to ambient. And so that is pretty much it. This is a fairly simple setup. There is not much that you can do to actually break things because the vacuum pump is simply just on and off, and the valves are also on and off. And let's get started. So before we get started, what I will do is let's open the door and let's remove the shelves. We're just going to remove the shelves just to show that the shelves are removable, and just to kind of show how things look inside. So here's the shelves that are removed, and we'll just place them on top. This is the inside of the chamber. You have these shelf holders, and now these are not removable, of course, but you essentially use them to hold the shelves. And let's close it. So you essentially just close the door, and you clamp the door to initiate the initial seal on the O-ring. And then what you do is, in order to start the vacuum process and start evacuating the chamber, what you do is you close the venting valve, and then you make sure that the vacuum pump, you make sure that the vacuum valve is open. And then what you do is there is a switch on this pump in the back, and we'll turn it on. And that is pretty much it. And so the pump is running, and you can see here that the vacuum is being pulled and increased. And so it'll take about a minute to get to about 15 inches of mercury. Maybe not a minute, maybe not quite a minute, but yeah, it'll take about 20 to 30 seconds, and we're already at about, this is about 12 inches of mercury, and then we're at about 15 inches of mercury right here. I'm getting there. Now, the maximum vacuum level that you can pull with this vacuum pump is about 24, 25 inches of mercury, depending on your altitude, but it's going to be 24, 25 here in Utah, because we're a little bit higher altitude. But it'll take you about a minute to get there. So that is pretty much it. So one thing that you want to do now, let's say you're happy with 20 inches of mercury, and once you reach 20 inches of mercury, what you can do is you can just simply close the vacuum valve, and then you can turn off your vacuum pump. And what's going to happen is that the vacuum is going to hold, and sometimes this is desirable, where you want to hold the vacuum inside your chamber while you're performing your test, for example, your seal integrity test. So you can kind of hold the vacuum and kind of look at your specimen, and that is pretty much it. And then you essentially, you can, in order to release the vacuum, all you have to do is you open the venting valve. And as you can see, the vacuum is released and you're back to zero. So let's do one more thing, and what we're going to do is we're going to adjust our vacuum with this vacuum adjustment valve. So our first initial test, we didn't do it, or initial run, we did not do it. But this time we're going to open our vacuum adjustment valve, and then we're going to use this guy to essentially turn it to adjust our vacuum. So once again, what we'll do is we close the venting valve, we open the vacuum valve, and we turn on the vacuum pump. And off she goes. So the vacuum will start, getting pulled, and we're about 5 inches of mercury. So this is a dual scale. So we have inches of mercury on the outside and kilopascals on the inside. So let me show you what we will do. We'll let it go past. We'll let the vacuum go to about 20 inches of mercury, and then what we're going to do, we're going to adjust this valve, and then we'll bring down the vacuum to about 15 inches of mercury. And this is essentially a bleed-off valve, so it kind of creates it bleeds off any excess vacuum that's being pulled in the chamber by the pump, and it creates like an equilibrium. So let me show you what we're going to do. So as we turn the valve, we essentially just open it, and you can kind of hear it. Maybe, I'm not sure if you can hear it or not, but you can hear that the air is venting, and you can now see that the vacuum is decreasing until we get to about 15. And then when you're at about 15, let's see, we'll increase it a little bit. There we go. So let's keep it right there. So now what you do is you use this second bolt right here, this nut, and then you just lock it in. And once you lock it in, it'll stay at about 15. So you kind of have to play around and see which is your desirable vacuum level. But at this point, you essentially just pull the vacuum, and then you don't have to close your vacuum valve right here. You don't have to close this valve, because as the pump runs, it keeps evacuating this chamber, and your vacuum essentially stays fairly consistent at 15. All right, and then once you're done and you're done with your test, you essentially just go ahead and you open the venting valve, and then you can essentially turn off your vacuum pump. And that's pretty much it. So up next, what we'll do is we are going to do some dry vacuum leak testing. So what we'll do is let's put the shelves back in, and these just slide right in like so, and they're removable, so you can place them anywhere you want. But just for our illustration's sake, let's go and we'll put this guy. This is just a protein bar. We'll put it on this shelf. We'll put this protein bar on this shelf, and then we'll put this protein bar on this shelf. And what we'll do is we will do a dry vacuum test at about 15 inches of mercury of vacuum. So let's get started. Again, close the venting valve, make sure the vacuum valve is open, make sure that the vacuum adjustment valve is open, and turn on the pump. And let's watch and see what happens. So let's see if I can, oh yeah, here it goes. So you can see the vacuum increasing, and then you can also see that the bars are inflating. And of course that is because the pressure inside the bar is ambient pressure, which is at about 30 inches of mercury, but you're pulling a negative 15 inches of mercury, so you're essentially applying 15 inches of mercury of pressure onto these bars. And looks like they have passed the test. They're expanding, but we're not seeing any they have not popped. Maybe this guy has. We'll take a look at it later. So this bar may have actually failed, and I'll tell you why it may have failed. Because if you have about 15 inches of mercury vacuum test pressure, and it does not look like it's inflating, you may have had actually a fail. Now, keep in mind that we don't really know whether the sealing, whether the material that's used to actually seal the film is permeable to air. So we don't really know if that's the case. Some are not. It really depends on the product. But let's release the vacuum. What we're gonna do, we're gonna hold it. Let's actually just hold it at 15 inches of mercury. And then what we'll do is we will open the venting valve and release the vacuum, and let's see what happens to them. So notice that these bars have collapsed a little bit, as if they have lost some air. So this indicates essentially, so they kind of feel like they're vacuum sealed a little bit. So it does indicate that they may have a leak. This one actually has not changed, so this was a good one. But in any case, so this is something that you can do to test for it. All right, well, this is pretty much it. So if you guys have any questions with regards to how to operate a vacuum pump and vacuum chamber, it's fairly simple. You essentially just have two valves. Now, of course, this one has one additional vacuum adjustment valve, but essentially two valves. And if you want to, to summarize, essentially, if you want to pull a vacuum, you close the venting valve, open the vacuum valve, and then you evacuate the chamber. If you want to vent the chamber and bring it back to ambient, you essentially just open the venting valve and it will vent. So that is pretty much it. So thank you very much for watching, and you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.